Hi, Ms. Kessler.
Hello, Mr. Hatfield. Good to see you.
How we doing?
Oh, doing well. Yes,
Good.
today is day 9 of
Hey,
distance learning.
I was going to say, hey, we're about 2 weeks in.
Yep, yep.
That's a
And
little more specific.
today's like a Friday because we have a shorter week because of Good Friday tomorrow. And
Yes, it is. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Hey, wanted to catch up with you. I know you got some really cool stuff going on with math, and thought we'd chat a little bit about that.
sure.
But you're really kind of starting off with the, talking about the transition to distance learning, and it was with us. It was extremely quick. I mean, we came in spring break, boom, we have to make this move. We have to make this switch. You guys did a phenomenal job in changing over to a virtual classroom. What are you finding that is kind of rising to the surface right now related to that change, that pivot to a virtual class?
Sure. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit about math and the content of math, and as a teacher, how I'm going about choosing what to teach and how to teach. But I think more importantly, what I'm noticing is there are um, some really great things that I think. Well, there's great things our kids are doing, but I'm noticing that there's some things that are a little more important than the math that I'm teaching. And one of those is I've been noticing that there's some habits of mind that are important for everybody, and I think that there's some takeaways that we can work on developing during this distance learning model that will be applicable for any school setting and basically for life. And by that I mean self-direction is one, and for the sixth grade math students that I'm teaching, there's a lot of responsibility for them to navigate Google Classroom, videos that I may post, live classes, showing up for advisement, and the self-direction to be disciplined and to follow through with where they're supposed to be and when, and they're doing a great job with that. In addition to that, there's times where I'm available for extra support, and I've noticed that some kids are saying, "Hey, yeah, I want to do that," and others aren't yet. And in a classroom setting, I can kind of grab them, or I can go at lunch and say, "Hey, you're going to come for extra help today." In this setting, it's a little trickier. It's either an email or maybe talking to parents. But for the student to start developing that self-direction of, being responsible and saying, I'm going to do that. And the other one that comes to mind is so we talk about self-direction. We also talk about advocating for your learning. And
Right.
so um, like in a classroom, you have some kids that are constantly raising their hand and volunteering answers, and you have others who maybe are a little bit more reserved, and we know the kids really well, so the relationships have been built all year. And so in a classroom setting, I'm calling on kids, and I can tell by reading them when they understand and don't understand, and we're continuing to work on that. But we also want students to be able to advocate for their learning by expressing if they understand or don't understand. And in a classroom, that can be something simple like they just make this kind of face that I know that means they don't understand. It's a little harder with distance learning. So I'm looking at a screen of all their faces in trying to read them, but I'm talking to them about skills of how to advocate for learning. So they can email me if they want help. They can come for the extra help in the afternoons. I've had students who have formed study groups, and so they get together with a friend and they do homework together. And they asked, "Is this okay?" And I was like, "Absolutely," because in a class, I would say, "Turn and talk with your friend," or for 10 minutes, we're going to try these problems with a partner. So to be able to do that, that wasn't me telling them, "Hey, join a partnership." They took that upon themselves. And so that, advocating for their learning, doing things that make sense for them are kind of these like intangibles that they're learning through this process that I think is amazing, and that's going to carry through into any educational setting, and also just skills for life to stick up for yourself and your learning.
I love how you tied that into the mission statement and our motto. We learn not for school, but for life. Speaking of that, there are some social and emotional learning hallmarks, related to independence that you were just talking about and building confidence in students. What are you seeing on a daily basis that kind of supports those initiatives?
Sure. So, one of the things that we decided to do with sixth grade math is in order to be able to continue to differentiate the best I can, we have two math classes going on throughout the day. And so children have time to work independently in the morning, some days of the week, and then they meet with me in the afternoon. So they may have a video in the morning that I recorded that asks them to work on something, and then they come for that extra time in the afternoon as a class, and that offers me a chance to keep the 27 children in two groups, but trying to make sure that there's that time available, and also checking in with them. One of the things I'm trying to figure out is how can I have more small groups in math, and so trying to come up with a schedule that might work for that so that they continue to build their confidence in math. One thing that I've noticed is there's some kids who just are stepping up in class and like kind of cheering each other on. So if I ask a question and somebody shares an answer, then somebody might be like, yeah, and like a shout out to them or good job, or
Love that. Love that.
yeah, it's fun. And it's just good to hear, because in a classroom, they may say that, or they may be, sitting with a friend and they might like high five each other, but they're translating that already. It's like transferring over into distance learning. So the relationships they have with one another, you can still see digitally, because you can hear them, connecting. So those, as I mentioned earlier, that self-direction, that independence, this is a platform that requires a lot of that, but as teachers, we're here for them. We're here to help guide that, and so are the kids. Like if somebody's having a connectivity issue, another child may reach out with a text, and then that child tells me, oh, hey, so and so can't get in right now, but they're going to watch the video. Or
Right.
so that they're kind of taking care of each other, which is really good.
I know that a part of your approach to individualize that is office hours and kind of that one-on-one opportunity. What does that look like? I've heard from teachers in the lower school. What does that look like in the upper school?
So we're transitioning to that right now. I'll be honest, it's 9 days. The students are
Sure.
really busy. So in the mornings, they have their classes. And within those classes, sometimes they're live. Sometimes they may be an activity they're supposed to work on. A lot of their classes are live. And so in the afternoon, that's when I have an office hour, and I'm available for them to pop in and ask questions. So there have been some kids who will do that. And sometimes they come with partners, and it's just like at school. Like they don't want to come necessarily alone during SSW, but they'll come with a friend, which is great. I also know that, as I mentioned earlier, some kids are doing homework together. And so then they might pop in during office hours to ask a question. There's been times where I've picked up the phone and just called a house, or arranged a meeting, a Google Meet with a student who maybe needs a little bit of extra support also. So we're still kind of adjusting to that, but the kids know that I'm here, I'm available, and trying to make the most of it.
That's super. Sherry, when I think of your classroom, I think of the words active, engaged, so much movement going on. You can walk in and see small groups working together, a lot of collaboration, a lot of communication. Now all of a sudden, boom, we've switched to a virtual classroom in an online world. What does your classroom look like now, and kind of what has been that big challenge for you in transitioning?
Of course, I'll be honest, I like everybody, I prefer to be back in the classroom. There's so many things I miss about what you just described, having students work side by side with someone, or in their small groups. But there are some things that we're learning, that we're giving a try. So if I can find math that's hands-on or that connects to the real world, that's always something that I'm looking for. And one of the classes right now is working on some work with Pythagorean theorem, some work with surface area. And so I went through the lesson to think of what could they really do at home. And be successful and create a model. And so we were working with nets and how a net translates into like a cube. And so I just said, I want you to build this cube. And so everybody in the morning, I had a video. I described to them what I wanted them to do, explain what a net was, asked them to find a ruler, some paper, any kind of paper, construction paper, whatever they could find. And then they had to build a cube. And then they brought that to class when we met in the afternoon. And so then everybody was able to hold up their cube and share information about the cube. And from that, we used that to learn about surface area. And then, so the next time that we met, they brought their cubes and we were able to measure those. But then I said, okay, I want you to have a box from your house. I held up a popcorn box. And I asked them to calculate the surface area of that popcorn of a box and then bring that to our next class. And so we used the data then. Some students held up and said, oh, mine was like, let's say 400 something square centimeters. But then if we had one that was a lot larger number, we use those numbers to find if we had some errors, which we're going to, that's okay. That's how we learn. And so it was like, wait a minute, if you have a really large number, wouldn't you expect to see a really large box? But then we discovered some kids used inches instead of centimeters. So then we had the discussion of how would those numbers look differently. So kind of looking around the house to find things that make sense. There was a problem involving a picture that had a mat and a frame. And some kids were telling me they didn't know what a mat was. And so I just literally pulled a picture off the wall. And there, it had a mat, a double mat and a frame. And so I held that up and showed them. And then I had students saying, oh, that's what they did. They looked at the mat in their house. So trying to find things that are purposeful and that can still be hands-on is really important. One of the other classes is learning about scale factor right now and scale drawings. And so we were showing different objects and I was comparing like an architectural drawing compared to, a large building. And so I was talking about like a model car that somebody might have at home. So trying to relate to things that they could see. Normally we would bring these into the classroom and we would have the materials available, but kids are finding things at home so that they can use that to understand deeper.
What does differentiation look like right now for you?
So, that's a goal of mine that we're working on. Like I said, I have the classes split so that I can meet with every class every day to try to meet their needs in a smaller group. And then my goal is to figure out how then within that I can have some more small groups. So I'm learning some of the technology side of things of how I can assign different assignments to different people. But I also want them to have time to collaborate. So getting a chance to, talk with somebody about some problems. And so as we move forward, part of my initial goals were to make sure that everybody was understanding their routine, where do they need to be and when, how to submit homework, how to turn things in. We've been trying different formats for assessments. And so now that we're getting that, like today they have an assessment that they're going to turn in. So once we get some of that more down pat after today, then that's trying to figure out some small groups is a goal of mine. They are able to, like when we meet in a class and if there's somebody who you can tell that they've have a misconception, I'm able to address that. Also, they're turning in their homework as a photo right now. So it's kind of cumbersome, but what I'm doing is looking then at their written work. And then if I see like an error or somewhere where they're kind of going wrong, I can communicate that right now through email. Ultimately, I think it would be great to be able to have some more like one-on-one or one-on-two or one-on-three conversations with kids. And I think once we kind of get this schedule down pat, I think that would be a great thing to try to include with math.
Any other things you want to talk about?
I guess I've been amazed. The kids have been really resilient. I know people say that, about children. I ask questions and like they're out in their bed or they're sitting at a table or they're sitting on their front porch outside and they go like this and they raise their hand. Um, it's like they're in school because they're in school, but they're sitting on their bed. And sometimes they just call out answers too, but that's been really cute. And I have to say the very first time we had a Google Meet, a class, I had it open, but I was in the kitchen grabbing some water and I could just hear their voices and hear them talking. And it was energizing. It's fun to be with the students. I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to have live classes. It's just, to me, it's powerful and it energizes me. And it's just socially, I think it's been wonderful opportunity for the kids to talk and connect and then still see their teacher. So I feel very blessed that we're able to do that. And we've made it through our first 2 weeks.
There you go. And I know that when you guys hop on, those kids see their teacher, they're excited. It's good to see their friends. It's good to see that. I think that's some normalcy that is maintained through all of this. I think is huge, just huge.
Yeah, it's important. And they do, like they'll help one another in class just like they would in a regular class. Sometimes they use the chat feature and they might say like, your microphone's a little quiet, or would you speak up please, if they're sharing. Because I've had kids, I'll say, walk me through this, and ask them to help walk through a problem, or they hold up their examples. And so, yeah, that connection between one another, I think, is really important.
Love that.
The relationships, that's key. I know that, we say that about our Powhatan family, but that really comes out right now because we have such strong relationships between students to teachers and between students to students. And I really see that carrying over into this model. That's very fortunate because they do have connections with their teachers and connections with one another.
Ms. Kesler, thank you so much for hopping in here for a little bit for me today. I know it's busy. We're about to have a 3-day weekend though.
Yes,
3-day
I'll
weekend.
teach my next class. I got one in 20 minutes. Yes.
We got you. But I just want to say thank you. Continued success. Keep rocking.